Hi, folks. Jesse Ivy back with you again today. And today we are going to talk about Airbnb. So, I don't know if you're familiar with Airbnb. You probably are. You've probably heard of it before. Basically, people use Airbnb to go places and rent rentals cheaply so that they're able to maybe have a funner vacation because they're not at a hotel or motel. They're kind of off by themselves, and somebody owns the rental and they're just renting it like for the weekend. And that's basically what their business model is. So, with that being said, Airbnb has recently had a lot of negative propaganda in the media. And one of the articles I read recently was from Marca.com. And let me just read you a couple things about it. They're basically saying that Airbnb is on its way out, or could be. And basically, a lot of bookings are down. They're down by like a 50% decrease compared to this period last year. And the some of the major areas that have been affected are like Phoenix. Phoenix really has. It's like the Mecca capital where a lot of the Airbnb bookings are way down. Same with California, Texas, Oregon, Montana. And so what's going on is a lot of people are getting worried because they're not making as much money as they were making like last year and during the pandemic and stuff like that. And so a lot of these articles are coming out saying that Airbnb could be in trouble. Their company could be in trouble. The business model itself could be in trouble because of the fact that a lot of people now are not getting the bookings that they got before. And because of that reason, their income, which they use to buy these maybe high-end rentals and that type of thing, now they're no longer being able to afford their mortgages because they're not being booked out. Their rentals that they bought with the idea of using them for Airbnb, they are no longer renting out. So like maybe the year prior, they were rented out for 3 months straight. And now they're lucky if they're getting two renters during that 3-month span. So it's not everywhere, but it is beginning to kind of look like a bubble. And I think people are getting a little concerned about it because of that reason. And reading this article here, Texas is one of the states facing challenges with a 40 to 50% decrease in bookings, especially in cities like San Antonio and Austin. And then San Francisco, San Diego, Los Angeles, Oregon, they're having a lot of problems with it. And so people are starting to get concerned that perhaps Airbnb, could start tanking. And, their CEO has come out and said their business model is not in trouble and that type of thing. But there are people who are saying that it is in trouble. And I've read quite a few articles about it, which is really interesting to me for the fact that a lot of people bought rentals or a second house with the idea that I'm going to make a lot of money using this model, using Airbnb, and I'm going to make a ton of money. And so I took out a new mortgage on a second house. And now with, the inflation, the interest rates, some of these people probably bought Airbnb rentals that they were going to use as a second home, but then they we're also using them as renting out to Airbnb, people that would come in for the weekend and rent their place out. So with that in mind, the whole thing is beginning to not look so great. Now, what has happened, and some of the articles that I've read, what has happened is basically this. It's just like Furbies. Remember Furbies from way, way, way back there? Furbies, everybody thought Furbies were cool and everybody wanted to buy some. And then people started selling them, Furbies. In the state I live in, everybody was selling Furbies. So at first, a lot of people were making a lot of money with the Furbies. There were those little stuffed animals, and they were kind of cute and everything. But everybody started then selling Furbies. So what happened is supply and demand. At first, a lot of people were making. There was a few people that were doing it. Then before long, everybody was doing it. Same thing with Beanie Babies. The same thing with hemp a few years ago. Remember hemp? It was going to make everybody a millionaire. So if you had raw land and you put it in a hemp field, you had water rights, you were going to become a millionaire by growing hemp and making a ton of money. Same thing with marijuana. And I live in Oregon. So in Oregon, same thing with marijuana. Everybody wanted to own a field and grow marijuana or open up a distillery and sell it. Same thing. So what's happened is in Oregon is that the market is so full of people. So many people came in to do this that the marijuana industry here in Oregon went from way up here like this down like this. And the price purchasing marijuana is now much cheaper than it was a few years ago because why? There's so many people selling marijuana. And that's the same thing with Airbnb. It started off as a great idea. It is a great idea, probably still. But now so many rich people, rich investors have come into the space, whereas before, a few years ago, it was just, a handful or more than a handful, but, not as many investors in there. And so people are making a killing. And so from what I understand now, that isn't the case at all. People are not making a killing because there's so many fish in the tank, So when you have, it's just supply and demand. That's basically what's going on here. And the supply and demand, there's too many people now having Airbnb rentals. And because of that reason, and because these deep pocket investors have come in, a lot of these little fish, little guys, that maybe only have one Airbnb instead of 10 Airbnbs, now they are in trouble with their mortgage because they're not being able to rent this thing out. And in fact, I read this one article about this one guy, and he says he's basically just going to start renting it out as a rental because there's like 1 million Airbnbs in the United States. I mean, that, currently, and there's there's far less houses for rent. So think what that does to the rental community when Airbnb is getting all these rentals that they're using for Airbnb rather than renting them out to the public. So what's going on is this market, this Airbnb market, is so full of investors. They've all done basically the same thing. And some of these investors went in with risky mortgages, like maybe a mortgage on a variable rate or whatever. And now, instead of, maybe they got in and it was only 3% when they bought their Airbnb rental, but now it's way up there. Now it's up at like 7% or whatever, so some of these people's, the monthly rent that they were getting from Airbnb was fine for when the interest rates were low. But now, because they're not getting as many people renting their rental, they're having a problem even paying their mortgages. So this has led to people wondering about if there's going to be a real estate crash coming up because of this Airbnb meltdown. Do I think Airbnb is going to go bankrupt? I don't really think so. But I do think that I think that after the pandemic and maybe a little bit afterwards, you were kind of at the peak of it. I do think it's going to subside, and I do think it's going to come down. I don't think it's going to crash. I don't think Airbnb is going to go bankrupt. But I do think a lot of investors, especially the mom and pop investors who don't have a big, company behind them or Warren Buffett behind them or whoever, they are in trouble because the market has so many investors in it, the Airbnb market, that now people are having a tough time paying their mortgages. So long term, as far as the real estate market goes, is this going to lead to a real estate market crash like back in 2008, where, you remember back then where everybody's, everything, just foreclosure, foreclosure, foreclosure over and over and over again. And do I think that that's going to happen? Do I think that, you're going to have a meltdown for 5 years caused by Airbnb? Well, number one, I don't believe that. I don't believe it's going to cause a total meltdown. I do think you probably will see some people default on some of these, but I don't think you're going to see a total meltdown like you did in 2008, because there's just not enough. Airbnb doesn't control enough of the market for that to happen. But I do think you're going to see some foreclosures happen. I do think, like, Airbnb's stock price, it's down 10%. So, that tells you something right there. That tells you investors are kind of getting worried. Mom and pop investors who bought these second houses, they may begin to try to sell them because they realize the Airbnb market has plateaued and now it's headed kind of down. So I do think those type of things will happen. It slightly could affect the real estate market. I definitely don't think it's going to make it crash. It could affect prices to a degree, but I think you would really have to see a massive, massive default with these Airbnb homes for that to happen. But speaking as an investor, I don't think this is something you should be getting involved in at this time because of the high interest rates. So, if you aren't very savvy on real estate matters or that type of thing, or somebody tries to talk you into it, I would advise you not to get into the Airbnb game. I think it's plateaued. And what's going to happen is a lot of these mom and pop investors, they're going to default or sell off their stuff. And it's just going to leave a lot of these big institutions, big, corporations that can own 100 Airbnbs, and nothing's going to go wrong because they have so much money behind them. I mean, some of those could even tank too, depending on what kind of loans they got on those properties. But some of these corporations have the ability to buy these second properties at, a huge discount because they can buy so many of them and they have so much money, behind them. But I don't really believe long term that's going to happen. I don't believe you're going to see a total market crash like we had in 2008, but I do think you're going to see a lot of these mom and pop investors get out of this game. Hopefully there won't be too many foreclosures. I do think though there will be some, but a lot of these people maybe will just sell it, sell these Airbnb rentals, or turn them back into just a regular rental, a second house, for a second house, turning their second house Airbnb investment back into, just being a regular rental. A lot of people, though, will probably elect to sell because the easy money isn't there. And that's the thing, folks, about a lot of these investments when you're dealing with real estate or you're dealing with anything that's kind of a fad, what I would call. You want to be careful with that because everything, goes, there's peaks and valleys in investing and in real estate markets. And you just have to be aware of that. And when so many people come to the table, like with Furbies, marijuana growing, hemp growing, I could do Beanie Babies. I could go back, over and over. Things just don't last because so many people get into the game and then it's not as profitable. And then a bunch of people fall out and then a lot of people get out. So just be careful when you're investing and make sure that if you don't know what you're doing, you seek competent advice either from a lawyer or from a local realtor or somebody. If you have comments about this, if you own a Airbnb and you're having problems, renting it out, please leave a comment below on this video. I'd like to hear from you and see what you have to say about it. If you know somebody that's in trouble with their rental because of Airbnb, please let me know. Leave your comments below. Also, if you like these videos that we put out here on the Owner Terms Land Network, please subscribe to our channel. We appreciate it. With that being said, I also know a few people who have raw land and they're also doing the Airbnb thing. they're renting out their raw land as, for camping and that type of thing. They're hosting it on Airbnb. So I'm sure some of my people that are on my channel here, they have been affected by that as well. I'd like to hear from you. Anyway, I hope you're having a great day, and we will be back again very soon with another video for you to watch. And this is Jesse from the Owner Terms Land Network. Have a great day.